Spaceflight has always been a game of allowances. We could only launch what a tight rocket fairing could hold. Astronauts squeezed through narrow hatches, and telescopes peered through lenses constrained by payload bays. The entire history of space exploration has been restricted by the limitations of physical size. But if you look at the aerospace developments from just this past week, a distinct shift is occurring. The hardware we are sending to orbit is suddenly massively scaling up. We are moving away from the practice of building bespoke, single-mission vehicles. Instead, the industry is laying the groundwork for standardized, heavy-duty infrastructure meant to span the solar system. To secure a permanent foothold off-world, engineers must break three distinct bottlenecks simultaneously: how much we transport, how large we build our habitats, and how wide we cast vision. Moving hundreds of tons of cargo and pressurized volume into orbit provides the logistical and biological buffer required for a permanent human presence off-world. Look at this image of Starship stacked on the launch tower at Starbase. To push past the transport bottleneck, you need rockets of a scale that borders on the absurd. SpaceX recently completed a full 33-engine static fire of their Super Heavy booster. The sheer violence of that exhaust creates a heavy vacuum effect, sucking nearby debris into the air and requiring a massive water deluge system just to keep the concrete pad from tearing itself apart. But getting to that level of power is messy. Just prior to that success, a 10-engine test experienced a sudden sensor trip leading to a fast shutdown. That abrupt halt caused actual mechanical damage to half the engines involved, forcing teams to pull them off the booster entirely for troubleshooting. Blue Origin is similarly normalizing heavy lift, recently launching a reused New Glenn booster for the first time. They flew the massive first stage, it separated perfectly, and recovered the hardware at sea. Getting out of the atmosphere is only half the battle. On that same New Glenn flight, one of the upper stage BE-3U engines failed to produce the required thrust during its second burn. The payload was left in a low, unsustainable orbit and had to be deorbited entirely. Transporting huge payloads also requires massive logistical pivots on the ground. SpaceX is permanently retiring Falcon 9 recoveries from their drone ship, just read the instructions. That vessel is being reallocated entirely to ferry Starship hardware from Texas to the East Coast. Mechanical damage and lost payloads are expensive, but they are producing raw flight data. These tests prove that the transition to massive, reusable brute force transport is now an operational reality. Lifting hundreds of tons to orbit accomplishes little if astronauts are forced to unpack it through tiny, restrictive crawl spaces. The aerospace company VAST is designing a direct engineering solution to this habitation bottleneck with their newly proposed large docking adapter. This diagram illustrates the physical scale difference. The small circle is the current international docking adapter standard, a tight opening of about 0.22 square meters. It expands outward to show VAST's proposed interface, featuring a massive 2.9-meter diameter. That's 13 times the current opening. You need this passageway to connect up to 20 massive station modules, allowing crew and heavy equipment to move freely. Expanding that physical footprint means we also have to scale up how we protect the humans inside. Following unexpected charring on the Artemis 1 mission, NASA has already modified the heat shield for the upcoming Orion spacecraft, thickening the protective layers for the crew's return from lunar orbit. Widening docking ports and reinforcing heat shields converts these vehicles into foundational components for long-term orbital architecture. As our physical footprint expands, our ability to map the universe has to scale up to match it. That brings us to the final bottleneck: vision. Look at the technicians standing around the hardware in this clean room. This is NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, and in a rare occurrence for aerospace hardware, it is currently running 8 months ahead of schedule and under budget during final testing. This animation shows exactly how it breaks our visual scale limits. The single square represents the field of view for the Hubble Space Telescope. It rapidly zooms out to a massive 100-square grid, showing the mapping footprint of Nancy Grace. It will use this vast view to chart the structures of dark matter and dark energy across the universe. Capturing a massive slice of the sky is only its first job. Its second critical function is to hunt down Jupiter-sized exoplanets in our local stellar neighborhood, using an instrument called an active coronagraph. Here's how that works. A bright parent star completely washes out the faint light of a planet orbiting it. The active coronagraph physically places a dark disk over the starlight, so the telescope can capture photons from the exoplanet in the shadows. This massive telescope generates the massive data scale required to test and rewrite our current established models of physics. Within a single week, we are watching the aerospace industry simultaneously upgrade how much weight we can lift, the physical volume we can build, and the distance we can see. When an upper stage fails to reach orbit, or a rapid engine shutdown bends Raptor hardware, it is easy to view those events as major setbacks. In reality, these hardware losses are the mandatory toll required to scale up our operations. We are used to seeing polished, pristine satellites sitting silently in a vacuum, but creating that final product requires intense, messy work, with thick steel rings being aggressively welded together in sprawling factories. The current chaos is the forge of progress. The constraints of early spaceflight are largely behind us. What we are watching right now is the real-time construction of the heavy mega infrastructure needed to support a permanent spacefaring civilization. If you want to keep tracking how this massive off-world expansion unfolds, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.